Hi and welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. We're again John, Dave, myself. We're going to look back over Ireland's narrow defeat against England, all the other Six Nations matches, and Leinster's victory against Cardiff. So, boys, disappointing on Saturday, 13-10.
Yeah, it was. It was very disappointing. It was disappointing because it was such a good game. It was so tense. The intensity was just unbelievable. Both teams were really, giving their all. So it was disappointing to lose from that point of view. And it's disappointing to lose in a game that we actually, there were a number of individual errors, but we actually played quite well for huge chunks of that game. So it's disappointing to lose from that perspective. The performance wasn't disappointing in the main. But, at a game at that level, at that intensity, played at that kind of ferocity, all it takes is one or two mistakes to cost you the game. And, we had those one or two mistakes, and it did cost us the game.
Certainly did, yeah. Have to credit England as well. They played really well. They really contained us. I suppose a little bit like they did last year in Lansdowne Road as well. They, we were kind of feeling good-ish going into that game, and we felt that we might have a chance. But they really contained. That's what they did. They contained us. That's what they did to the All Blacks when they beat them as well. They contained them and put pressure on them with their defence and their physicality and all that type of stuff. I remember I was here last week saying I have a feeling we're going to win this, and I don't like that feeling because I could be wrong, and as it turned out I was wrong. If you put our teams on paper, both sets of teams, you can see, of course there are areas where England are strong, but overall if you give points to each player, on paper we should have them. Okay, they've got home advantage, but individual by individual, I think we have a better collection of individuals.
That's what makes it disappointing, I think.
Yeah, but they played better as a team, and they really played as a team.
They were tactically very apt.
Yeah. As opposed to inept.
Just to take one example, one of the big successes of Ireland's season so far has been Peter O'Mahony on the turnover.
Yeah.
And England would have looked at that and said, well, what do we have to do to stop him turning over the ball? And the answer was, actually make him make the tackle. So if you look at a number of their carriers were targeting O'Mahony to make him make the tackle. Now, he made the tackle all right, but that meant that there was nobody there to make the turnover, or nobody specifically there to make the turnover, and which had been a tactic of Ireland, that O'Mahony was kind of standing back to let somebody else to make the turnover. This was the tactic, to let somebody else make the turnover, to make the tackle, so he could get in on the turnover. And England negated that by making him the tackler.
Yep.
And it was just little things like that. I mean, Ireland had good tactical moments as well, but just things like that showed that Lancaster actually, he does know what he's doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we played into their hands. Like we tried to chip over defences, which just don't work. Like they very rarely work. I mean, 1 in 10 might work. We did that twice. We kicked away.
Another way around them,
Well, look, you don't do it from your own 22, John. You play basic rugby. Well, we have, as we've proven in our opening two matches, a fantastic drive and maul. We didn't start it until the second half. When we did do it, we made huge inroads into the English team, but we ignored 40 minutes, half the game, before we even implemented that tactic.
It could be argued that the reason it worked those times is because we didn't go to it every time. England would have been expecting us to go to the driving maul every time, and if we'd gone to it early, it would have had no effect later on.
So we've kept all our cards up our sleeve until it's too late.
Well, there is that. That's the other side of it. But that driving maul was grand against Wales, it was grand against Scotland. It was always going to be more difficult against England. Now, it worked well for us, possibly because they probably thought we tucked it away and weren't going to use it at all by the time we started using it. But, what you were saying about the kicking is true. I mean, the chip kicking was bad, but it's very hard to judge the kicking when all of it was, relatively poor. All our tactical kicking was relatively poor, and that was one of the errors that was made in the game. We kicked too long. We kicked to Mike Brown.
I was about to say we could have targeted the other lad, May.
Yeah.
He was, he had a bit of a comedy moment when he threw the ball at Mike
because
Brown's
the kicking
face.
was so inaccurate, it gave Brown time to take over from May as the receiver. So there was errors there. Obviously, the kickoff that ultimately led to the English try was a complete misfire.
Yeah.
So you have all these things, and individually, in and of themselves, against a lesser team, against Scotland or Italy or maybe even Wales, the way that they were playing the last day, we would have got away with it.
Yeah.
Not against England, not the way that they're playing, not the way the team is set up, and the tactical nous they have on the pitch. It wasn't going to work.
Yeah, they really have. Mike Brown had a stormer of a game. Really, like that goalkeeping, that was going to be a try if he didn't. That goalkeeping ploy that he did, where he had to dive like a goalkeeper diving for the corner.
I think both fullbacks had absolute stormers. Brian Moore, who's normally rare to praise backs and even rarer to praise
Irish backs,
back three members, was raving about both players, and he was right. Both players had absolute 9 out of 10s. You know.
Yeah.
They were very, very good. Brown was superb, but that's what England kind of. When they were finding their feet, say last season before, but certainly last season, when Lancaster was trying to work out what his best team was and how best to get all his best players on the pitch, he messed around playing Alex Good at fullback and he played Brown on the wing. And I think this season he's realised that whatever benefits are gained by having Alex Good on the pitch are negated by not having Brown at fullback.
Yeah.
So he stopped it this year. He's learnt his lesson. He's moved on. Brown is England's fullback now, and he's a very fine one. He had a superb game, and it was noticeable that that both tries came from two fullbacks running hard, running straight from deep.
Professional rugby player in the Northern Hemisphere.
It's got to be up there,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that's the case, if he's worth so much money, if Racing Metro are prepared to pay him, or if he's prepared to leave Ireland for that, then these are the matches that he has to stand up and say, I am the man.
Actually, if he's played that much money, it's Racing Metro matches where he has to stand up and say, I'm the man, because they're paying his wages.
Well, he's playing for his country, which far supersedes anything in the club.
Well, one would think so, and I agree with you. But
I bet you the boss of Racing Metro doesn't think so.
At the end of the day, it's always it's a bit of a it's a completely invalid argument about payment for players. As any player, as somebody often says, we don't get paid to play; we get paid to train, play for free. But the thing is, yes, we'd say he was at that 95-97%. But at that game, that game,
you needed 100.
One of the best Six Nations games for a long time.
Yeah.
You needed to be up at 100.
Yeah.
And a lot of the players were. That's what people are forgetting. People are letting the disappointment of the loss cloud, the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you had, 26, 27 guys, both teams, and indeed some of the subs, but playing pretty much at 100% of their ability, from both sides. It was a cracking game to watch, and it was in that game that maybe 2% that the halfbacks were off made the difference. Now, one thing it does do is it kind of forces Joe Schmidt's hand for the Italy game, because people are saying before that, I think Joe Schmidt may have taken an approach similar to Declan Kidney did to the Scotland game in 2009. If we'd won that game, he could have blended some other guys in. Can't afford to do that now, because England have to play. We're into a points chase, right? We have to beat France, and we have to points difference is what's going to win the championship for us. So it's a points chase. England are going to put a huge number of points on Italy, or you have to assume
they're in Italy.
No, you have to assume that they will. You can't say that they're in Italy. Ireland have to go into that match thinking that England will put 50 points on Italy. That's the way they have to think about it.
I think the hardest thing that Ireland have to do is beat France.
They also have to. Well, you see, you can't beat France this week.
Of course.
So all you can do is this week. They also have to assume that Wales are going to put big points in Scotland, right? So what they have,
I think that's a way.
Again,
is it a way?
Yeah, but they have to plan for the worst case scenario. So to a certain extent, Joe Schmidt is limited in what he can do for the Italy game. He has to pick a very strong team because we have to score a lot of points. But one thing I do think that he has to pick a team with a lot. I'd nearly go 3-4 split on the bench in terms of bringing real speedsters in.
Yeah.
Wear Italy down, drag them down, and then bring some serious gas on.
I heard Schmidt interviewed earlier on today, and he was asked pretty much that question, and he was kind of saying, well, some guys have played very well over the Rabo 12 games or Pro 12 games over the last number of weeks while Six Nations has been on, but he said you have to counterbalance that against the guys who played on Saturday not having a game if they're rested against Italy for 3 weeks, and then they become a little bit ring rusty. So he's got a very and like he kind of actually said, look, this is my first time to actually be in this situation, because I was used to being in a club situation where I always had games to go through.
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, it's a classic. What do you go for? Do you go for the most amount of points? And if so, like Dave was saying, do you stack the bench with Zebos and whoever's Fitzgeralds and try and break them down in the first 60 and bring guys like that on to score a rake of tries? Do you just keep faith with your team to keep them all pumping? I think perhaps a bit of rotation in terms of starters and bench players maybe, so that the guys that you want to be fit for France are at worst coming off the bench, whereas the guys that are normally on the bench maybe get a start. The like of Marty Moore. Maybe if O'Mahony isn't quite 100%, maybe that brings Ruddock into the equation, or whoever. And I would like to see perhaps guys like Fitzgerald and Zebo getting a look in, because they're
particularly Zebo. I mean, like,
so just to finish off what he was saying before we go into that. The other thing is that's all very well and good, but you have to score the first 10 and the first 20 points before you scored the 30 points and the 40 points, which is what I'm saying about in terms of, you can't go out and load fire rain. There has to be sufficient quality on the pitch to wear the Italians down before you can bring on the quicks.
You've got to earn the right to bring on your fast wingers. To mix your metaphors.
But like, I just wanted to mention Zebo. Like, he scored again at the weekend. I think it's 4 tries in 3 games, or 3 tries in 4 games, something like that. But
he makes it look easy.
But he definitely is coming into a bit of form now. And I think might be a bit remiss of Smith not to reward someone. Now, admittedly, there, he's playing in the Pro 12 when it's at its weakest, when half of the squad of each team's squads are missing their internationals. But he's still got to cross the whitewash, and he has been doing that.
We need a bit of a spark as well, something to just catch fire there.
It's a very delicate balancing act that Smith is under. But it's not all doom and gloom. Like, I mean, we were a penalty kick away from getting a draw in that game.
I don't think there's a. The only doom and gloom is the result.
Of course.
The performance is quite good. Players that we're hoping to develop are developing.
Yeah.
If that's, you look at the way that Devin Toner's playing.
Absolutely stormer, superb. Apparently, he was the highest tackler as well in the game. You look
at although the England game, he had to perform a different role. You look at how Peter O'Mahony has come on this season. You look at the way that the reserve front row, certainly the 2 props have come on. Ian Henderson got a run out. Jordy Murphy got his first cap. I mean, there's a huge amount of positives to be taken from it.
Yeah. And especially...
sorry, just one more thing. And it has to be remembered, to a certain extent, that was an understrength Irish team.
Well, we're missing our 2 most potent players.
Ferris and...
I was going to say O'Brien and Tommy Bowe, these
O'Brien,
are guys that
Tommy
make
Bowe,
consistently... Ferris as well.
Yeah, but give them back to Alagi, give them back a couple of guys.
That's fair enough, but they do have weight of numbers. We can't afford to miss somebody like Sean O'Brien as much as England can afford to lose to Tigalangi, because they've just got these. They've got 12 professional teams. They've got 1 million players.
Yeah, but look how they struggled to find a centre partnership that didn't include Tuilagi. Like they had Billy 12 Trees on there.
I think that's a function of the game in England rather than the thing. I was looking at the under-20s on Saturday night, and the English guys. There was a couple of good players in there. Freddie Burns' younger brother is playing out half for the under-20s. There's a couple of good players in there, but it was athletes. And what they're doing is they're taking athletes and hoping to turn them into footballers. And you look at the Irish players were far better footballers than the English. And England couldn't actually shake Ireland off for a very long time, despite their physical advantages, huge physical advantages, because Ireland were much, much better at playing rugby. And what Ireland were doing was they were trying to utilise the skills Ireland played, a quick, fast passing game, lots of little kicks, clever kicks. But that's, the English game. The English game is based on turning athletes into footballers. It works a lot of the time. It certainly works well enough for the Premiership. Not sure if it works enough for the international team.
Worked on Saturday.
It did. No, it did. But you see, the guys that they're we're talking about, we're saying Tuilagi wasn't there. It's not like they didn't. It's not like they had Morris Field and whatever
Johnny Bell
and in the centres. They had good players. I mean, Leroy Burrell is a very good player. What's his name? The other centre, his name keeps falling out of my head. 36 is a very good player. He's a very good footballer. So it's not like they had they had chopped liver there. They had good players. Tuilagi is exceptional.
And particularly where we've come from. I mean, it was in the last 2 years we lost a 3-0 series against the All Blacks, which is fair enough. But one of those games we were beaten 60-0. We were beaten by, last season, we were beaten by Scotland, by Italy. We drew with probably the worst French team in 40 years. We were beaten by England on our own patch. We were beaten over there in Twickenham 2 years ago, annihilated. We were coming, that team was at probably the lowest it's been in the last 15 years of professional rugby. and Schmidt has brought the level up. Now we're critical because we want Ireland, or we expect Ireland almost to be like the All Blacks.
We're disappointed
and win every
because
game.
we're disappointed because we didn't beat the All Blacks.
Yeah,
and
didn't win,
and annoyed because we didn't win in Twickenham. You know, it's a rising tide.
On Schmidt's first away game.
So I mean, things are there. I mean, and the players are there. And one of the things Schmidt said when he first took the thing was he wanted to broaden the amount of international players we had, and he's done that.
Seems to be working okay on that.
And actually, I was
without the aid of injuries as well.
Yeah, but I was just doing a little bit of research last night, and I was looking back at our match that we played against Northampton in Donnybrook earlier on this season, where you would think that obviously all the Lions guys were away, the internationals were rested, and you know, pretty much that fixture, like Northampton brought over, I think, pretty much their full strength team. Yeah. And we played very much a callow young team, but there was 3 guys from that team which played Moore, McGrath, and Jordy Murphy
and Dave Carney.
I think came on as sub as well. So in that team, we would have said, you know, pretty much as our B's or possibly even C's. Yeah. 3 or 4
played one of the most intense matches against you know, one of the biggest opponents in the Six Nations.
But you see, that's it in terms of, you know, depth that's been generated and the broadening of the squad. Now the question is how we use that in the remaining 2 fixtures. We have a very big game. Obviously, we have pretty much a points chase against Italy, but we still have to remember to win the game.
Well, why don't we have a look at the try that we did score? Rob Carney, it reminded me very much of the try that we scored against Claremont in the semi-final. Yeah,
same move, and very well executed as well. Like, it all looks kind of spontaneous, but that's planned.
Well, the moment this is the moment you know it's not spontaneous because he's waiting for him.
Yeah.
A nice little block from Paulie off the ball as well, you know.
Yeah, but if you look at the runners in the backfield as well, there were just so many decoys going.
That's the thing. I mean, a certain amount of attention has focused on the block, but the actual thing that causes England so many problems is the decoy runners. You're right.
The block was very slight, though. I mean, it was even if you replayed it, you'd hardly give anything for it. Like
it was just a superb try and a great timing as well. Look at there's 3 guys coming on dummy runs, 4 if you include the guy who actually takes it.
Yeah.
And Sexton was there in support if Carney had been tackled.
Yeah, well, that's what you call options, I suppose. It's like the one we were talking about before with Wasps, where Darcy, the little wraparound that Darcy went straight on.
Yeah.
You know, you've always got the option to do one of the other moves. You know,
I think
one of the dummy runners.
Sometimes in rugby, justice is not always done, but you know, there was 2 tries and the 3 players kind of involved in them were the 3 best players in the pitch.
Yeah. I also think that your man May knocked on their first try, or Conor Murray dislodged the ball off him. You know, you couldn't really begrudge England the win after they did get across the whitewash more often. They did, you know, they didn't win by luck.
No, I take that. I take that, John. But I'm just disappointed that our star players made silly mistakes, and it's not. I'm not just focusing on Sexton. Like, there's other guys. You know, Paul O'Connell gave away a very needless penalty. Andy Trimble also gave a needless penalty.
Got a bit of the jitters there, you know? I think when he knocked on a high ball or something, and then he just lost focus or something for a few minutes.
But I think that there were jitters, and again, sorry to focus back on Johnny Sexton. I mean, he did a wraparound with Brian O'Driscoll. I'd say he must have done. I'd say he's done that 1,000 times between training and playing for Leinster, and he was. It's like we often say, we've said about Leinster before, he was just that millisecond, half a millisecond off the pace of the match. And that's the difference between catching that ball and going on the loop. Yeah. And
everybody's going to say that's because he's in France and he's not playing with Drico anymore. I think it was Shaggy the other day on one of the, was it off the ball or the second captains, I think it was, who said that Joe Schmidt is now in danger of reinforcing the belief in Johnny Sexton's head that because he's in Racing Metro, he's not going to be up to scratch, and if he doesn't stop going on about it, it'll get into Johnny's head.
I think Joe's carried over a certain amount of bitterness from last season, from the way that he was as Leinster coach, the way his out half was taken away from him. I think he's carried it on. I mean, well, you know, Joe, you're the Ireland coach now. You can actually do something about it in terms of making sure A, it doesn't happen again, which in fairness he has done, and B, rectifying what's already happened. So. Yeah.
But like when we got to 10-3 there, if we got another score, any score, I think we want to just made that gap a bit too big for them to come back.
We had our foot in their throat.
Yeah,
we took
it off. Yeah. We took it off with that, again, with the missed dropout or the erroneous kickoff and the events that followed it.
That was an alarm bell. The minute I saw him miss that,
but like,
I just went,
that same here.
There's a problem.
I said I knew there was something,
but
this is going to come back to us.
After we got that try, they kicked off and we failed to catch the ball cleanly and control it and clear our lines. We let them take the momentum and drive into our 22 and put pressure on our line, as opposed to just catch it, kick it, and clear it.
In a game like this, it doesn't take very much.
No.
You know, I mean,
and we did defend pretty well all game. We kept them out.
If we'd successfully made that kick off and got the next score at 10-6, you know, it would have been England that were, you know, feeling the mental pressure and feeling the ramparts crumble, but instead it was us. And that's the thing.
Just
I mean,
these tiny margins.
That's the difference between 100% and 97%.
Well,
you know,
you've also got to say that, well, you know, Joe Schmidt is only there a wet day, and it was his first away game. Those guys are a lot younger, but they've been together for a while. Most of that team has been building and building, and you know, they've a lot more experience playing together under their manager than we have playing together under our manager. Because, you know, okay, there's a lot of Leinster players in there to be used to Joe, but not. The team isn't used to Joe.
A lot was made in the media of the caps difference between the Irish team and the English team. But I can't remember who it was. It might have been Alan Quinlan or it might have been Shane Horgan made the point. Yeah, but over nearly 250 of them are based around the number 12 and 13 jersey.
Yeah.
So, you know, the difference in experience wasn't as vast
as it might appear.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we had a number of, I don't want to, not callow players, but inexperienced players like Devin Toner is relatively inexperienced. Peter O'Mahony is relatively inexperienced. Chris Henry is relatively inexperienced. Even despite the fact that he's been on a line tour, Conor Murray hasn't been around since year dot. I mean, this is his fourth season. Dave Carney, you know, a lot of guys like that. So they were too young. I mean, the gap in experience was overplayed, I think, to a certain extent in the English media. But I think and one of the things that's good for both rugby in England and Ireland was how young both teams actually were.
I think another thing that good old Larry Dayglow and his when he was going on about them getting to Sexton, I think they kind of did a bit, and I don't mean mentally, but just they did force him to make a lot of tackles, which can't have helped. Yeah, you know,
there was talk that he got a bit of a knock in the head for last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, but he did have to make, like, if you look at Ronan O'Gara over the years, he had David Wallace coming off the side of his scrum to protect him, and he was so used to doing it, it was second nature to him. Chris Henry, great player and all as he is, fabulous at the breakdown, he's not a whirlwind. He's not fast enough.
But
there's probably about 10 kilos in difference in O'Gara and Sexton.
There's a big difference. 5 inches. I mean, for all O'Gara's bravery or whatever, he was technically a really poor tackler. Technically. He always got himself in the way, in fairness to him, but he was diabolical when at the actual process of it. Whereas Sexton is actually a very good tackler.
Yeah, but he always, well, neither of them shirk tackles. But
no, I'm not saying that.
I know you're not.
O'Gara never once backed away from a tackle, but he never actually successfully completed one either, because he just wasn't. I mean, some players can kick a ball, some players are great passers. He just didn't have that skill.
But the only point I was making was that maybe, because you've got Chris Henry on the open side, which is where the out half is mostly standing at scrum time, he didn't have anybody else to come out and make the tackle fast enough. There was runners straight up into him before he could go anywhere, and he had to make a lot of those tackles. Darcy outside him, obviously, who's a pass master, actually deserves a mention for his. We've been mentioning it for as long as we've been around, but the way he makes yards. And he can still do it. In international rugby against a team like that, he can still go into contact and make yards.
And get the ball back.
There's got to be something in the laws of physics that's being defied by him in that. Like, nobody can explain it. Nobody can make any sense of how he does it.
He's such a low centre of gravity and huge strength in his lower body. That's, simply it. I mean, he's a great athlete, you know.
But, you know, lots of other people have low centres of gravity and, you know, they can't do that.
Use it, though.
Well, whatever it is, I hope he continues to do it.
If you think about it, he's actually changed his game. When Darcy first rose to prominence, we'll say 2003, 2004, he was a dashing, cutting blade going outside with, very similar to O'Driscoll at that time in terms of style. He's changed his game completely.
But he was a winger and full back, really.
Yeah, he was a winger and full back by trade.
I think that's when he came in, was about 2004 when he came into the centre.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But that's when he came to prominence.
Yeah.
Whereas he's changed his game now. He's not a crash ball guy, because he doesn't do crash ball. What he actually does, if you notice, when he goes into contact, he always shifts off either foot, just so he can take he doesn't take the contact head on. He forces the guy...
Takes it on his own terms.
Yeah, he takes it on his own terms. He forces the guy to be slightly off where he wants to be for the tackle. So he does it. What is
That's
it that...
part of how he...
Was it Cheika used to always shout at them, put a little something on it? That's what Darcy does.
Well, anyway, we can draw a line under the Six Nations now for a couple of weeks. Leinster had a nice victory against Cardiff, but once again, David, a sparkling performance for 15 minutes.
It was a mixed performance, all right. Yeah, it was. We started at a great pace. Took them, scored 2 great tries. Were well on top. But that Cardiff team wasn't that bad, and our team wasn't as strong as we'd wanted it to be. So there were elements there that kind of signed for it. But we were too strong in the end. They made a number of mistakes, and we again for the I don't know how many weeks running, we absolutely dominated them in the scrums.
Oh yeah. Well, they were a bit like the Dragons in that facet of play. They were rubbish in the scrum, and we ran over them. But they had these young backs again, just like the Dragons, who were well able to throw it about and seemed to have our number in midfield. Now we were a bit worried about our midfield last week, and probably they're going to be playing again this week. Mackin and Reid, who put either of them with another player, a more experienced player, and they ain't so bad. But defensively, it's like they're not on the same page.
No, I'm going to disagree with that, because
Reid is not a great tackler.
The problems weren't the tackles that were being missed by the centres, because by the time they had to make tackles, we were scrambling. Cardiff identified, and I pointed out to you at the match, and they did it at least 3 times during the game, that the Leinster team manned up with a front row forward and a back row forward as second and third man out, and they ran through that gap every single time.
But if you look at Bent was constantly creating a dog leg.
Bent was constantly was the man, and I don't know why he was. I mean, you don't expect a guy to be athletic. He is an old school front row forward. He's not one of the new mobile, keen heely, shiny, go faster stripe type ones. He's one of the old type that you and I would appreciate. But that gap was there, and the gap was caused by the forwards. It wasn't the centre's fault. But Cardiff had obviously done their video work, because they spotted it and they went for it every single time. Every time that particular alignment in defence came out, they went straight through it.
Well, if you can see that, hopefully Matt O'Connor can too.
Well, I said that to you at the time. I said if 2 fat old lads sitting on a couch inside can see it, then hopefully Matt O'Connor can.
But we picked a pretty strong team. We had 6 internationals playing in the match. We had 3 more on the bench.
Considering the amount we lost to Ireland,
we had 14 away with Ireland.
That was a pretty strong team.
But I thought when Rhys Ruddock come on in the second half,
made it huge game changer.
Well, we kind of got off to this flying start, and then we completely went limp. And then when Ruddock came back on, he seemed to increase
we retumesced after going limp. He was a game changer. And to a certain extent, that's what he's there for. Experienced player, even though he's young, he is a very experienced player. Who's playing really well at the moment. Came on and absolutely took the game by the scruff of the neck, in a way that the much more hyped Robin Copeland didn't.
Yeah, the butcher of Cardiff Arms Park.
Well, he did 3-on-1 and he completely messed it up.
Yeah, you or I would have.
Yeah,
we
wouldn't have gotten in the position in the first place.
He had 2 chances to make the pass, and he held on to it and dummied once, went, and then he had the second time, and he didn't go, and he got held up over line. But they scored 3 tries, we got 4. But if they had got that try, it might have been a different story for the game.
It might have been. It might have changed. It might have changed the direction of the game. It certainly would have given them a lift at a key time, because that was quite close to half time.
But I thought their out half and I think their full back
were superb. Absolutely.
And I said to you during the match, which one do you think is, if you didn't know either of them and someone said which one is the Springbok with 20 or 30 caps?
Yeah.
Who would you said?
Yeah.
I definitely would have said the Cardiff guy. But maybe we just use Kirshner slightly differently than they attacked off their fullback all the time.
Yeah.
We didn't seem to bring.
They ran him off first phase ball.
Yeah, we didn't use Kirshner very much.
I'm not entirely sure about Kirshner yet. Like when he came over first, I was going, yeah, I'm liking this. This guy is, but he's quite physical and he's reasonably fast. He has a bit of everything, but
should he get involved more?
Yeah, maybe is that what it is? Has he got the top couple of percent, or is it that he hasn't meshed with the team yet, or is it?
The other side of that is one of the things we have been.
I wouldn't call him rubbish or anything, but
one of the things we have been all season is very imprecise. Yeah. We've spoken about it before that we have been very imprecise. So it doesn't matter if he's making all those runs, cutting the angle across, maybe similar runs to the Cardiff fullback, because we just haven't been able to put the ball into his hands a lot of the time. I mean, we saw him do it against Zebre, for example. He made the kind of run that he should be making a lot more often, or we'd hope to see him make a lot more often. Made that run, ball into his hands, try. Now maybe he is making those runs and the ball just isn't going there. Maybe because of the imprecision, and we're passing balls behind us, we're stopping guys in their tread a lot of the time, if you notice, and it's still happening. We're not.
I just haven't seen him grab the game by the scruff
No, he
of the neck.
He hasn't done that.
Like I would have kind of hoped.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
Or like Issa had done.
Well, come on.
Well, no, fair enough. But when Issa
unfair comparison of the year award.
But hold on a sec now, because we got to know Issa over 4 or 5 years in Ireland. But his first season,
he was given
when
out
he was playing out half.
Yeah.
We were a bit unsure. Maybe it just takes a little bit of time to come. People moving to the other side of the world. It takes a bit of time to settle in. And I still go back to my point. Our team has been just so unsettled for the entire season.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. Yeah,
we're just no one is settling into one particular position, because if Kirsten's playing fullback this week, he's not going to be there against Munster when all the team come back. It'll be Carney, and it just must be very unsettled.
It's it's more unsettled than it usually is. Yeah. But then that's because we have more players away, and to a certain extent, it's kind of good for Leinster that we have so many internationals, because it shows that what Leinster are doing is right.
Well, we watched the first try of Conan, who's another one of the production line of Leinster back rowers coming through.
Absolutely. Great debut, didn't he?
He had a very, very fine game.
Bit of a messy scrum.
It was a messy scrum, but, he spotted the opportunity quick enough. Got to the line.
And he got there.
Now...
Was it a double movement?
No, I don't think it was. No, I'm not. What I was going to say is nothing to do with the try. I think we watched the try first, and then kind of comment on Cronin's performance in general. It was a very good try, good hands to get to it, and good strength to get over the line. But I say
Cronin.
Oh God. Conan, yeah. Your man goes slidey in on a little sneaky one there.
No, you're out places.
No, I'm talking about the out half trying
trip.
Yeah.
Let's see it again now.
By the way, I have to say, I like that artificial pitch they have in Cardiff. I don't know what it's like to play on. I don't know what the players think of it, but certainly as a viewer,
get electric shock off it if you slide on it.
As a viewer, it certainly adds to the.
Yeah, I played on the one behind the pitch in Lansdowne Road, and it's great. The other thing is the ball doesn't bounce through.
Yeah,
it kind of duds.
Now, is that the same kind of pitch? Do you know?
Well, it's 4G and behind.
Oh, well, that is.
So, I mean, it's only a couple of years old.
Yeah,
it's in 2010.
Yeah, good hands.
Speed of thought, good hands.
Slidey.
Yeah, sliding in with the boot. He showed all the ingredients. Considering it was a debut, he was very level-headed, and there's a lot of experienced guys against him out there. Okay, not hugely experienced.
I think there was a certain amount of hyperbole the next day about his performance. I mean, he was very.
Of course, that's going to happen.
He's
a big guy.
Good.
He was very good.
And he'd be really happy with his debut. Matt O'Connor would be really happy with his debut. He certainly pushed himself into the frame for future selection. There were guys thinking about maybe he could bench for Heineken Cup matches and whatever. I don't think he's there
yet.
On. He still made a few errors, things that he has to. He still has a few work-ons, as they say, in terms of his control at the back of the scrum. Once or twice was a bit sloppy, but those are small things.
Yeah, it's a hard enough skill as well.
Those are small things. It was a really promising debut. I was really happy with him. But, he wasn't... He got man of the match, but I didn't think he was man of the match. I thought Tadhg Furlong was man of the match.
He was great.
I thought he was absolutely superb. I thought he was the best Leinster player on the pitch. For a guy who is, our 3rd/4th choice tight head prop, depending on which way you order these things.
There's no slash there. He's 3rd.
No, but depending on which way you like to order these things, I think he's the real deal, you know. And we've got, like we were talking about the Ireland-England game, gone from a situation, it's gone from famine to an absolute smorgasbord of Valhallan proportions in terms of the number of tight head props we have.
And it's also a seamless kind
and Stephen Archer.
Yeah.
It's also every week you got to get something in. It's also gonna be hopefully a seamless transition, because as Ross is winding down, you've got Furlong ramping up, and you know you've got Moore and Furlong, who what's there 2 years between them, a year and a half, something like that. Like, wow, there's Leinster's propping future for at least 10 years.
If they're not moved somewhere else.
But the other thing is, and one thing that has to be said about one of the best things about the game, and a lot of the commentators missed it, was the scrummaging in that game, Ireland and England, right? Very few resets, you know, no messing around. The ref didn't have to take anyone at task and pull the front rows out and give them a talking to. The front rows,
something we didn't mention,
bound, they got together, and they scrummaged, the two of them.
We probably could have used it more as a weapon in that
game.
But
8 players scrummaging against one another, or 16 players scrummaging against one another properly, with no need for constant resets. That wasn't popping up or going down and everything. And those regulations, I think, favour Ireland, because we're producing a lot of technical players rather than the old gym bunnies that you used to see. A lot of teams went that route.
Well, you know, it's not going to favour Toulon with the likes of Heyman and what's his name, the tall Sheridan.
The only thing is they might be old enough that they were around when scrummaging was popular the last time.
Well, tall front rows are at a disadvantage now. That's why Marty Moore is looking so good.
Yeah, and Cian Healy.
And you know, but the thing is that technical players like Marty Moore, like Tadhg Furlong, a couple of years ago they might have been cast aside for being, you know, just too damn small.
Yeah.
But now it's all about technique.
So what do we see anyway? Another front rower, Stracey, come back and score his first try after he got his heart operation.
Yeah, it's good to see him back. Always showed a lot of heart, Strauss.
Boom boom.
And here he is at the back of it, driving maul.
Well, he was involved in
the 22
few, incidents of this in the build up to this try.
But that's, I mean, you look there and he's slinging Josh Navidi around like a rag doll. And Josh Navidi's a tough player. He's a very good player, actually.
Yeah, he had a good game, in fact.
How do you think Lukey played? If it comes up for Irish,
yeah,
good cameo, but not quite back to fitness yet. I think.
He's not there yet. Maybe a game this weekend will do him power of good. You know, we might see something
was
closer.
Was that Redden there nearly making it through on his own? The Tadhg Furlong.
He was coming away with that ball one way or another.
But he get up again.
He's a big unit, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. But he's of that shape, you know.
Marcus Horan out on the wing there. Bam.
In fairness to Luke, it was very unselfish to give the pass over to
certainly it was,
because he could quite easily have got in there against
he probably could, but you know, Luke's experienced enough at this stage to know that
you want the try, not the glory.
Yeah.
Make sure of the try rather than risk the glory.
He didn't want the verbal assault that the Welsh commentators gave to Copeland butchering his try.
And boy, was it a verbal assault.
Well, they were slagging him off, saying, "Now we know why he's not in the Irish squad."
I'm sorry I missed that.
I think they forgot that put up with you, Cal. A Lion was playing number 8 for Ireland.
Yeah, they tend not to hold back on BBC Wales,
especially non-Welsh players.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was our second try, and we got off to a flying start. We were 14-0 up after a quarter of an hour.
Motoring at that stage. Unfortunately, we did our usual. I think is there a thing in the Irish psyche that goes, all right,
just too nice, are we?
Just take it easy now. You don't want to humiliate them. Like, come on.
Well, we certainly
get a bit easier.
We certainly didn't humiliate them.
No, we certainly did.
And this is our third try. Great play again there from Furlong, and indeed from Denton in support.
Yeah, good bit of driving.
And then the
nice fumble,
the old sloppiness.
Like that.
I mean, Noel Reid actually does quite well there to to resolve that situation. But then Rhys Ruddock comes in.
Brilliant try.
Boom. Yeah. That was unbelievable.
He was actually very unlucky not to get over himself.
He was.
He went to the Gordon Darcy school of breaking tackles there, I think.
There's a beautiful moment here, so there is. No, it's not. It was in the fourth try, wasn't it? The slap.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, it was a very nice try from Bent. He took his chance well. Which is not something I'm accustomed to saying about props. Unless they're Keane Healy.
You just wonder why you have to go up to the TMO for this try.
I think, well, there was genuine, from the rest position, there was a genuine concern that there may have been an accidental offside because of Denton. Now, if you notice, the guy who tackles Bent tackles him out of Denton.
He does, yeah.
And that prevents... but the ref in that situation was actually justified, I would have thought.
Possibly so.
Because there was a fear of, especially if you look at it here, you see he's heading straight for him, and then your man just knocks him out of the way at the last minute.
Yeah. Good point.
So thank you very much, Cardiff, for that.
Yeah. You needn't wrap it.
Yep.
We'll take it as it is.
No, actually, Bent, during this period of time, guys who often don't get an awful lot of praise suddenly become very valuable during this series of games. And Michael Bent is one of those guys.
Is he valuable because he can play both sides? I mean, you'll get, if you ask 5 people, several of them will tell you that he's keeping Jack O'Connell out of game time.
Possibly, and that's a valid point.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah. The other side of that is, a young player like Jack O'Connell, maybe he needs protecting. I don't know.
They say if you put 5 economists in a room, you get 7 different opinions. So,
and 8 of them will be wrong.
But anyway, why do we look at Redden's little sniping, scrummy try?
Speaking of Jack O'Connell, was it him that got? Oh, it was Jack McGrath that got the slap, was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And in typical Mal O'Kelly style, he didn't even flinch.
I think you can actually see when your man delivers the slap, as the camera pans away, you can see O'Connell just kind of pointing towards where the try has just been scored. Which is le mot juste, if you ask me.
Best reply.
Didn't Straussy say something like that in the Heineken Cup final?
Yeah.
What has he said?
Look at the scoreboard, mate, or something like that.
You can't believe a prop took you down or something.
Yeah, you can see it from the other angle. It's a lovely little punch. But it was nice. It was almost like from a training manual scrum half dummy try, because the dummy was so exaggerated.
I was about to say, I thought he really exaggerated it.
But it worked.
How did he get away with it? Here we go. Bang. Little punch.
Not a bad punch, in fairness.
No, it was.
He didn't really look that upset about it, though.
No, he didn't. He didn't. I don't think. I think it was more stylish than effective.
Yeah, well, not like the one that Julian White took on Mal O'Kelly that time.
Leicester,
that was a fair box now. How Mal O'Kelly didn't buckle under that. But anyway.
So that win, anyway, moved us very briefly up into the top of the league.
Yeah, for 2 glorious days at the summit.
So 3, actually. Yeah. Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
But the thing is, it's our 3rd successive bonus point win, and we're unbeaten in the 2014.
Well, that's the most impressive. That is the most impressive statistic about our recent games, because let's face it, some of the play hasn't been that impressive. But we've got 3 bonus point wins. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know what you can't do anymore, other than maybe win 75-9 or whatever against Treviso. You're not. You get your 4 tries. Job done.
Yeah.
You know, if we can get the win this week, and if we could get the 4 tries as well, it'd be brilliant. But even the win this week would cap off a 4-match period during the Six Nations in great style.
And a good results at this time of the season, when everyone's away, has a positive motivating factor when everyone comes back.
Very much so.
Because they come back and they're under pressure to keep the results up that the other guys have attained, and also they have a responsibility to those guys to carry on the good work that they've done.
And also they know that there's these guys are ready to step up if they're not.
And it keeps morale very high in the squad as well. I mean, I think when we won, when we got to the final of the league in, I think it was Czech's last season, they were so upset for losing it because they felt that the international players at the Heineken Cup winning. Playing players had let down the dirt trackers as such.
Yeah, it was in when we lost to Ospreys the second time at home.
Yeah,
that was the one that was really gutted them.
Yeah,
because they had the feeling was
gutted them.
Yeah,
jeez.
No, but from a
worry about them
in terms of this kind of motivational factor, they had let down the guys who'd put them in the position to win it in the first place.
Yeah.
So anyway, we play Glasgow on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Glasgow, obviously, I think they had 10 players.
Saturday night, Sunday morning.
They had
the latest game in the history of the universe.
8:30. But they had, I think Glasgow had 10 players playing for Scotland, so they'll be a bit buoyed with their result in Rome.
Yeah, but they're also missing 10 guys, which is good for us, and there are a few out through injury. Maitland's injured, isn't he? And will they have Carlin Isles through his visa problems?
No idea.
Before?
No idea.
I haven't heard a thing about it.
No, I completely forgotten about that.
Until he, because that's what I heard, that he's just waiting on a visa, and it was supposed to be sorted in short order. So we could see the fastest man in rugby on the field.
Second fastest, surely behind Zebo.
Second fastest man in rugby on the field in the RDS.
Yeah,
which might be interesting. And we've a few little things we could do in selection. We've got the Ireland front row coming back to us, itching for game time. So there's the front row picked. We're going to have Leo Cullen and Mike McCarthy in the second row, or maybe Denton and Mike McCarthy, or I'm not sure what we're going to have. Probably have the three of those guys.
Yeah.
In some form.
I'd say all three will get pitch time.
Yeah.
In whatever permutation.
Will Jack Conan get a second cap? Who knows? With Ruddock and Murphy coming back, you'd have to think that the two of them and either Ryan or Jennings are going to be in there with the other one on the bench. Ryan or Jennings and the other one on the bench maybe. But sure, we shall see. Halfbacks, will he start Madigan?
I would.
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
I'd hope to see him. Then I'd say Joe Schmidt will be asking him to pick him. And then Redden, you'd have to think, will be wanting game time for an assault on the Italy game, at least on the bench in the Italy game. So outside of that, it's Reid and Mackin again, and Kirshner at full back, and whoever's left healthy,
Fitz and McFadden
on the wings.
I'd say
okay, we've got Fitz and McFadden back. Fair point.
Unless he decides to use Fitz in the centre.
You could bring him into 13 because he does actually have a couple of options on the wing now who aren't Fanning or Hudson.
Fanning got a bad nasty cut on his ear. It's like two pieces actually.
He lost a big chunk of ear there,
But like we played Glasgow. I think we played them twice in Dublin last season because we played them in the regular season and then we narrowly beat them in the semi-final. But like that was
again
for the second season in a row, wasn't it? But
I think the semi-final the previous season was Richie Gray's last game for Glasgow. I remember him coming over.
Glasgow have a great record on the road this year.
Lost their first game.
8 out of 9. 8 out of 9 on the road. That's an incredible record. Because in rugby, between two teams of even status, the result generally tends to go to the home team.
But they had a bad defeat last weekend. They were beaten by Dragons away.
Yeah, and they were winning 17-10 and they lost 24-23 or something.
The thing about Dragons in Rodney Parade is, they can be very, very difficult.
Well, anyway, John, I know you're dying to put your getting up early on Saturday mornings to full use. So do you want to bring us up to date on the Super 15 and your hypothesis?
Well, I actually never get up early to watch it. I always record it, but there you go. Watch it at my leisure. But I've been developing a little theme over the last few weeks about the northern hemisphere and how the defence is back on the the defences are on top nowadays. They're in the ascendant. Thank you, David. So in the southern hemisphere, just in the last couple of weeks of Super Rugby, because last week was the first real proper week where the New Zealand and Australian teams playing, and you just tend to notice that there are penalties given away that favour the attacking team more, like penalties for not supporting your body weight, penalties for sealing off, whereas nearly every penalty at the breakdown in the Northern Hemisphere seems to be for holding on, which favours the defensive team, obviously. So, is there a little bit of out of kilter developing between North and South? Well, not that there wasn't always. And again, we've mentioned it a couple of times in the last few weeks about O'Driscoll being pinged for not supporting his body weight in the Lions tour, and the look of shock on his and all of our faces when he was pinged. what will the game do? You know, both north and south to try and bring it back into kilter, where there's still a contest for the ball.
Would you say traditionally the northern hemisphere are behind the southern hemisphere, and we tend to implement what they've done?
I think that what happens is the southern hemisphere, certainly in Super Rugby, you'll find it less in the Curry Cup and the whatever they're calling the NPC this year. Certainly in Super Rugby, they tend to emphasise rules or the refereeing of laws that provide a better spectacle.
Yeah.
I think it's
why
so
they
driven by television.
Yeah, it's very driven by television. So to a certain extent, there's always been this gap between what referees even before television came into it. There's always been a gap between what referees considered important in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And you'd often have every couple of years to be a conference to try and harmonise everything again before everybody set off in different directions. And I think it is normal because, you know, to a certain extent we play in different conditions. There's different emphasis from television, from sponsors, from what the crowds want to see, they consider a good rugby match. I mean, we consider last Saturday a really, really good rugby match. Would many Australians consider last Saturday's?
Well, if you look at the scoreline, it's normally there's at least 26 points scored by one team or 23 points. You know, whereas we would a 10-13 game with a classic, whereas down there they'll say it'd be 46-35 would be a classic.
Well, I'd say South Africans would have enjoyed the game, and probably a lot of New Zealanders. Australians tend to be.
They like their hard decks and their running.
They have a certain kind of thing that they like, and you know, to a certain extent, it's not that the referees are told, but they're certainly encouraged. They certainly know what makes a better spectacle.
Well, what my real concern is,
of course, the thing is they should all be refereeing all the laws all the time.
Yeah, it's difficult though. Well,
on both hemispheres, I mean.
I know, yeah. What my real concern is that the last time defences were so much on top, or maybe the second last time, you had the dreaded ELVs came in, where they were actually playing a different game in the southern hemisphere with different rules, which is a real extreme. And then we harmonised back again. The Springboks were winning the Super Rugby, or winning the Tri-Nations at the time. You know, and kicking and chasing was de rigueur, and we're gone back to that now. You're nearly better off without the ball, and something.
I think it's important to note that yes, to a certain extent that is the case, but it's a natural evolution in this case, not a law experiment imposed.
Oh, of course, of course.
To note that,
but. You know, what's going to bring attack back on top, or you know, where is this balance to be found in between the attacking and the defense?
It'll happen the same way as it always happens. A certain uniformity of defensive style will emerge. Then a coach will come up with a way to beat that defense. Other coach will go, yeah, that's what you do. They'll start doing it, and then we go through the cycle again.
Because
that's and it's not just football. It's not just rugby. It's also football and Gaelic football and hurling, and in pretty much every team sport that involves an organised defensive system.
We've had to legislate our way out of it the last few times it's happened. Like the interpretation of the, as they called it, the interpretation of the laws at the breakdown, which was changed by the IRB. Actually changed the emphasis of how the game was refereed, and that's what put the attacking team back on top the last time. It wasn't that somebody discovered a brilliant way of unlocking defences, it was just defences were
well, they tweaked the rules or the laws all the time. Look at what's done to the scrum, like you know, and going back even to sort of the 99 World Cup, like I think Australia didn't kick the ball in one of their matches for the entire match, because they didn't want to kick the ball away. They just wanted to play with the ball in hand.
I mean, the game is constantly evolving. I mean, you know, we all remember when you could pass the ball back into your 22 and kick for touch. There's various other things.
Peter Stringer made a career out of it.
Yeah, and that big long pass of his, you know. Jesus, I remember penalties from the 22 been taken from the ground kind of thing. There were always, the game is constantly evolving. Lifting was brought into lineouts to help improve.
Penalties being kicked into touch was the opposition throw at it on your own.
And that combined with the new lineout laws, or what were then new lineout laws, which meant you could support jumpers, meant that possession became king, and so there's a constant evolution in the game. And I always think that all it takes is one clever coach, and suddenly the game changes, and it can change like that. It happens in every sport.
Bring him on.
Yeah.
Bring him on. Anyway, thanks very much, lads, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.